Good morning. Good to be here again. And it's always nice to, especially on a chilly Thursday morning, it's always nice to be here to talk about trending issues affecting Nigerians and how they react to it. And this takes us to talk about anti-graft war in the country. We'll also talk about the Efcc and Nigerians generally, and how selfish they can be when it comes to doing some things and doing them excessively in some cases. And just yesterday news broke that the chairman of the Energy Commission has been arrested over what is said to be 500 billion naira scam, and that's a lot of money anyway. If you look at some of these publicly listed companies in Nigeria, some of them are not even worth more than that. And someone somewhere somehow decided to pack all of that, put it in his own private pocket. And of course, it is still being investigated, but at least the money has been traced somehow to his end. And he has a lot to say to the Efcc at this time. So the question is, as Nigerians, what comes to our minds when we get the opportunity to serve, when we find ourselves in public offices, and what do we even think of fellow Nigerians when they hear of this, serious allegations, monies flying around? We have seen situations where snakes swallowed money, monkeys cut away with monies in Nigeria, an empty building with a lot of money found in it. A former Inspector General of Police in Nigeria, saddled with responsibilities of taking care of police officers. His house was searched, and a lot of monies were found in his apartment. So the question now is, what comes to the mind of an average Nigerian given an opportunity to serve the people?
Really, and I think it's a good question, because when the story actually broke yesterday, I think he was even arrested yesterday in Abuja, and then this man was appointed by this current administration president in 2023, and so Nigerians are asking, why is it that he was arrested? And the funny thing is, EFCC is yet to actually speak on the matter. Though a member of the EFCC actually made made a disclosure to some members of the press and things like that. And then because so many persons don't even understand what the energy sector means. So I think it's the sector that is responsible for managing and producing energy for homes, for businesses, industries, and then many other sector. So basically, it just speaks to the fact that for a country that is still grappling with poor electricity, and then a lot of things going on in the energy sector, and then a huge amount of money can be siphoned by some allegedly, right? Because investigations are still on. I think this particular case will put more pressure on the EFCC, because this is not the first time that they will come out. Yes, maybe that's why they are yet to come out fully, because according to EFCC, I think around last year, when people complained bitterly that why is it that you come up with cases, you announce cases, huge amount of money, and at the end of the day, we don't get to hear if you were able to solve it or not. So they said they have decided to just hold on until they are very sure about a particular case before they announce it on their social media platforms. Maybe that's why they are here to talk about this case now. But then it's everywhere, people are talking about it, and then it speaks to the fact that this sector that is responsible for managing and producing energy like what? Like electricity, like solar, like wind and things like that, and quite a number of other things, even fuel. So you begin to, is it that sector is so porous that huge amount of money, can be missing, and then I think it's even, I'm not really sure whether it's connected to the former Minister of Power, because he was also arrested, recently. And so people are asking questions that, is it connected to him as well? Why is it that the sector is so porous like that? And then if you look at it, it won't just happen in a day. Whatever it is that happens in this country, it must have been, it must have started months or years back. So EFCC now, there's a lot of pressure on them, because at the end of the day, I'm not sure they wanted it to be out at this point, but then it's out. This is Nigeria. And so they have a lot of pressure on them now to ensure that they investigate this properly and make sure that Nigerians get to know the truth. And then if he's found guilty, he should face the law, because Nigerians yesterday I noticed that Yabilu was trending, and I just knew one way or the other is going to be connected. Maybe there's another case with the Efcc, because once Yabilu is trending online, there must be something wrong. There must something is going on within the Efcc. So it was trending yesterday, and Nigerians were asking questions again that this man who has shown interest in contesting, for a seat, in the Senate, and then he still has a case with the Efcc, I think about 80 billion naira. So Efcc, I think the Nigerians are now trying to point to that case and many other cases to say, Efcc, you have a chance to actually, do something, with this particular case to ensure that you do proper investigations, and then if at all is found guilty, he should face the law, basically.
You see, usually I do this a lot of times. When I hear about fraud, I hear about people siphoning money from public coffers. I would really like to, put it side by side with how much projects that can actually execute. 500 billion naira is a lot of money, and people would they would really want to know exactly where these monies go to. I was watching you yesterday, and you were talking about how much the Nigerian government has borrowed in recent times, and you listed quite a number of interesting occasions where they have had to borrow billions and billions of dollars. In some cases for infrastructure, in some cases for just to cushion the effect of the economy and some other things. There are several reasons why a country can actually, borrow money. But are these monies being spent, the way it should be spent? Are they actually used to execute these same projects they actually said they are going to execute them with? But if you now look at this issue, I was checking yesterday and I realized that 500 billion naira could actually build a medium to large gas-fired power plant that is about 500 to 1,000 megawatts range. I mean, that's a lot of money. If that was invested in that area, we know how much we would have added to the national grid right now. Right. And we can actually create several solar farms with in multiple states with this, which can actually be harnessed and then joined to the national grid. But quite unfortunately, Nigeria is a place where some decisions actually defeat logic. You can't explain why it is done. You don't even understand why such a person would do that. Let's talk about the healthcare sector. That could actually fund about 10 to 20 ultra-modern specialist hospitals. Okay, hundreds of primary healthcare centers, medical equipment upgrades nationwide. A world-class teaching hospital in Nigeria may cost around 30 billion naira to 80 billion naira, depending on the scale. Now, let's now say, everything is now expensive. Okay, let's assume that should, instead of 10 to 20, let's say it will build 5. Select 5 different states and build, modern day infrastructure. We would know that these monies are being invested. Nigerians will ask questions only when they realize, we are making so much money from oil and some other foreign exports. We are making money from borrowed monies or sometimes oil windfall. But then if you say we have made so much money, where exactly are you putting these monies? So I also will ask questions about expensive governance system we run in Nigeria. Okay, you have told Nigerians to go and relax. You have told them, development comes with pain. Yes, we understand. Even as individuals, if you want to make some changes, sometimes you have to shrink to truly expand. But quite unfortunately in Nigeria, you realize the fact that some people will tell you, this is how you have to do it. But they are not leading by example. Till tomorrow, you still see aides to governors riding in maybe 4, 5, 6, 7 cars at the same time. For example, if you check in Oyo State too, when the deputy governor is going home, especially in the evening, you see how many cars follows the deputy. I'm not saying...
Recently, I read an headline where they said a huge amount of money was used to purchase a car for a deputy governor.
Yes, that's what we do in Nigeria. You see, the problem now is where... the pocket leaks in Nigeria, there are quite a number of interesting areas where you would want to look at, especially how much money we spend on logistics for public office holders. There's a lot of money. If the deputy governor, for example, in Oyo State, even the governor himself, if he was paying for this fuel by himself and not from the government coffers, would he have expended so much on logistics? It's a big question that some of them will have to answer. I'm not being particular about Oyo State alone. Let's talk about other states too. When the governor is moving, about 30, 40 cars follows the governor. I mean, who are the people in these vehicles? I mean, where exactly are you going? And to what end do we continue to expend so much money on logistics alone? How much more of some other frivolous spendings that really does not make sense, defeats logic, meetings that I mean, you at the end of the day, what has it added to the Oyo State economy? At the end of the day, what has it added to the Ogun State economy? What has it done to the Imo State economy? Or maybe let's just go national. What has it added to the Nigerian economy as a whole? There are some programs that defeat logic that. There was a time I was talking to someone about the conditional cash transfer. How do you take conditional cash transfer to an area like Oluyole in Ibadan? When you can go to Bere, you can go to Oje, you can go to Idiarere. These are places where you will find the people who actually need these funds. But unfortunately, you realize the fact that some people would have manipulated the whole stuff. And that also speaks to Nigerian leaders who put people in some positions and they fail to look back. They don't even know how well they are faring there, what they are doing. And then when the backlash comes, of course, there will be a fair share of what the people are saying because you have not really monitored these people. Now, some Nigerians are just evil, naturally. And again, let me talk about housing. Okay, about 10,000 to 25,000 affordable housing units, depending on design and location, can be built with 500 billion, which has been said to be stolen. And if you want to talk about water infrastructure, something that is really lacking in Nigeria, in some places they would say, oh, there is adequate water supply in the city center, but in the rural areas, government really needs to work on it. But even in Nigeria, in the city centers across the country, there is no water supply. People have now turned to their own governments, drilling boreholes here and there. But when the effect of the boreholes we are drilling from house to house, when it comes, it will not be just about the government alone. It will be a natural disaster for everyone to now bear. But nobody is thinking about that now because you are now taking revenue from people who drill boreholes. You think we are doing the right thing? Of course, we are not doing the right thing. Even the governments have now failed to revamp the water sector. What they now do is to drill, especially some politicians who are running for office, or maybe when they are there, they want to empower the people of their constituency. They drill borehole, put one generator, and then they think they have done something for the people. Why not sponsor bills that revamps the water industry, that make sure that at every household, even if they have to pay, there has to be a tap that runs. Okay, but unfortunately, we do not think in that direction, and that's how Nigeria will always be where we are. We talked about Nigeria not having a national carrier, but do you know that this 500 billion can actually do so much when it comes to Nigeria having a national carrier of its own? Every now and then, Nigeria has an issue. Nigerians are being killed in South Africa, and we need to move some Nigerians back home. Especially recently, 130 of them signed the agreement to be repatriated back to Nigeria because of the risk of life in South Africa. And Nigeria does not have a national carrier. We have to consult some of these privately owned carriers to actually help us do the deal. But it is unfortunate. A country like Kenya will not do that because there is an airline tagged to that country. Ethiopia will not do that. Tanzania will not do that. How much more in Nigeria? There was a time billions of naira were spent on the logo alone. That was during the regime of President Muhammadu Buhari. And till today, nobody is asking, even the person that made that logo. I mean, it should be investigated. Because, yes, they said we spent so amount of money. Did you actually receive this money? Because at the end of the day, it boils down to the fact that we keep pumping money out. But when you check the results, juxtapose the result with what you have actually said you have done, it doesn't make sense. It defeats logic. And here we are in Nigeria. If we continue to go on and on what we can actually talk about and how these 500 billion and so many other funds that have been stolen in recent times can actually affect and make the Nigerian people's lives better, you would wonder. Okay, let me now do a breakdown of what this can actually, if you want to spread it across sectors. In practice, governments usually split 500 billion naira across sectors. Okay, if they have that kind of money, it will not be for a particular sector, we can actually spread. But if you spend 200 billion for roads, if you spend 100 billion for health, 80 billion for schools, 70 billion for housing, 50 billion for water and rural electrification, the kind of spending could visibly transform an entire Nigerian state within 1 year. Okay, there will be, of course, people will know that there are projects going on. But hey, it's not like that in Nigeria. Someone has to steal the money.
And it's sad because at the end of the day, even yesterday, people were saying, how can somebody steal this huge amount of money and the country is still languishing in a lot of
abject poverty?
Exactly. It doesn't really make sense. And you mentioned when people are asked to commission a project or refurbish a building, I remember, I think last year, a certain minister was given the privilege to actually refurbish a venue in ABJ. And then the people who used the hall, a few weeks later, they complained bitterly that they were sweating like, I don't want to mention that name now.
This was good.
They were sweating profusely. Because they were not asking questions, with that huge amount of money, billions of dollars. What did he do with it? Because they are not seeing the effect. The AC was not working. A lot of things were wrong. And then people came, the
probably dust affected the air condition. They needed to dust it.
Maybe, but it really does not make any sense. I think there's no accountability table in this country. And then one thing the federal government, is not understanding is the fact that people are quick to drag the federal than actually dragging the state or the local government. And these people are receiving more money. Several times the president will say, hold your governors accountable. But what can an average Nigerian do to a governor who is not performing his duties well? And that's the question. There should be a process. There should be, a way in which you can actually question these people if they are not doing well. And then speaking about some bills now, if you look at this sector now, we don't know the amount of money that was given to them as budget for every year. And that's why I said that because of the problem we have within the Senate, look at the number of people who actually represent the opposition in the Senate. So it doesn't make any sense. I'm not sure of their numbers now. How are they supposed to actually, confront certain policies, confront the budgets? Because
they are not even stable. They are busy moving from one political party to the other, and they have left governance alone. They are talking about politics already when it is just 2026 and the election is about a year away.
Exactly. It doesn't really make any sense, because that's one problem. I always say that Kemi Bedok, and another problem with opposition parties, or let me say the politicians, is they can tell that this thing is not good, it's not working. But when you tell them to provide alternative, and then I don't know, the inspiration will just disappear all of a sudden, because they don't have better alternative for whatever it is that the government is doing. And then going back to this issue of 500 million naira, some are saying, is it because the system is so porous, or it's about the individuals? If you look at even Ministry of Power alone, look at the past 5 ministers of power. People don't have good things to say about most of them. And then somebody is even saying that even this current minister of power, people will still complain about him. Right. Because it's really not about the person alone, it's about the sector.
It's a system. It's a systemic failure.
Exactly. Actually. And they're even saying that this current man at Intebe, I think one senator was telling me that they will come after you. They will come for you because you are saying you want to refurbish everything. You want to make sure that in 3 months...
That's why the sector will not work.
Exactly.
Even the senators know exactly what they are dealing with.
So what are we doing?
But then everyone decides to look away and act like everything is normal and it is not normal. Let me briefly cite an instance again before we leave this topic this morning. I was doing some reading a few months ago, and I took Lagos State as a case study. Okay, this is not to say I'm trying to praise any administration, trying to praise an individual, but one thing I have noticed is that there's a template that works in Lagos, regardless of who comes on board. And we have seen people who were kicked out of office. They were not allowed second time in office because probably there was a template you had to follow, and you feel like, let me do something different. Look at the light rail in Lagos, which has effectively, to an extent, put an end to traffic gridlock in some places in Lagos. And now, if 500 billion enters an economy of a state, okay, let's say Oyo State, for example, it could fund a light rail system for a medium-sized city. And Oyo State is very big, but at least let's carve out maybe 2 local governments or 3 local governments and then put light rail there and see, for a test run, let's see if we can actually continue with that, okay? That will be about 50 to 100 kilometers of standard gauge rail depending on terrain and stations, okay? Urban metro infrastructure phases can also, come with this. And in context, modern rail construction in Nigeria can cost between 5 billion to 15 billion per kilometer depending on complexity. Now, someone stole 500 billion naira. You can now imagine how much that would affect a community if the transport sector is turned around. Okay, let's do a light rail that cut across Okeogun down to Ibarapa and then to Ibadan, a certain part of Ibadan, terminates there, so probably somewhere in Edo. And then the people who are bringing, of course, coming from Okeogun, people can live in Shaki and then come to Ibadan to work and go back in the evening. But nobody is thinking in that direction, because sometimes I wonder if these people travel at all. And then if they travel, if they actually see anything other than Mary when they travel. Because at the end of the day, you go to these places. Some of them, they don't even have security aids when they get to America or the UK. They buy their own train tickets. And they get into trains and see, they can see clearly. It's not like there's no sycophant around them. Nobody pressings around them. So you see for yourself what is done in France, what is done in Belgium, what is done in the UK, or maybe in the US. But unfortunately, they will come back to Nigeria and act like, they have not seen anything. It's a deliberate attempt to decimate Nigeria as a country, because if Nigeria grows, some of these people will outlive their usefulness, and Nigerians will become wiser. And that is why they will weaponize poverty and make sure that no Nigerian thinks the right direction. And when the election comes, they want you to feel that the 5,000 they are giving you is equivalent to maybe 5 million naira. And you rush to take it from them. After you have cooked soup or maybe one fish and pepper over 1,000 naira, by the end of the evening, there is nothing left, and then you wait for another 4 years, suffer for another 4 years.
To get 10,000. To
get 10,000 naira. There will be an upgrade. They started from 1,000 to 5,000, and then the last election, some said they did 10K. But some elections done after that, off-cycle elections, some said they did 20, 30,000. Now imagine, ask yourself as a voter in Nigeria, okay? It's quite simple to do this analysis. Ask yourself, someone gave me 30,000 naira to buy my vote. If I did not sell it to him and I vote for the right person, okay, how important will my vote be? Because if it is not important, if it does not count, nobody would want to buy it from you. Right. So if you are thinking your vote does not count in Nigeria, you are joking. Of course, you are not doing yourself any good. Go and cast your vote. Vote for the best of all candidates, because at the end of the day, most Nigerians don't even do research. They would rather ask for people's opinion. Who should we now vote for now? And you have not done your own research. What is good for you might not be good for me as a person. So you must be sure that you are voting for the right person, because when they come back in the next 4 years, you have no choice than to vote the best of the devil on the ballot. And that, for me, does not work. Does not put Nigeria anywhere near the development you are thinking about.
Exactly. And then there's also the category of people who don't even have voters card. Some, they know
Jonathan said it to them when they went to me.
People are coming to me.
All of you. I'm sure about 50% of you
don't have voters card.
Don't have voters card. So if you now push me to go and contest, who will vote?
Who is going to vote? And then these people, they are so vocal online. You will see them, they tweet, they drag people, and then they belong to you will find them across all political parties, basically. It's not just about one political party. And so I think another issue is the fact that there are some people, just like you mentioned, they have no idea who to vote for. If you look at the elderly ones, most of them, they just want to perform
some will call their children and
ask them, okay, who should I vote for? And then if it doesn't sit well with them, they'll say, okay, Motigwe, I will still vote for whoever I want to vote for. So it's another problem. And then I tell people, if you don't perform your own civic duty, how do you question whosoever it is, that is in power in the next 1 year, in the next 2 months, in the next 3 years? Because at the end of the day, you have no right to question these people. And then just to conclude on this matter, I also think we need to look at the ritual of appointing people into offices, because according to the 1999 Constitution as amended, the president has the right to appoint certain people into certain positions. Till this morning, some people are still calling for the sack of Amopito, who is the INEC chairman, especially with some of his tweets, many years back. People think he's partisan. And then even though some members of the APC have tried to defend him so many times, people are saying he should go. They're saying he should leave. And then away from that, look at this man. I mentioned that he was appointed by the president in 2023. So I think we've seen several appointments, that have yielded positive results, in this country, actually, even with this administration, though there are very few. But I think we also should look at, that ritual of appointing people into certain offices. I know it's okay to learn on the job sometimes, but there are some very, sensitive positions that it takes a lot of expertise to actually excel in that position. I just mentioned even this EFCC that we are talking about, a lot of them, EFCC chairman, in the past, people always say is it that when they are out of the office, they are picking them up?
There are some appointments you don't take in Nigeria because they are going to spoil your white. Okay, there are some appointments you don't take in
and you might not find the right type.
You might not find the right thing to use to clear yourself. You see, someone said something recently and it was like, even if, of course, it's an assertion that has been made a long time ago by former President Olusegun Obasanjo, who said, even if you bring Jesus, I mean, some people would say it's blasphemous anyway, but he said, even if you bring Jesus from Rome to rule in Nigeria, there are some people who will be held bent on making sure that it fails. Now, one of the things you should be looking at is that there are Nigerians who would rather sabotage effort of leaders to make sure that Nigeria does not move as a country. That is where they feed. Yorubas will call them Arijenimaderu. If the energy sector fails, people who import generator, they make a lot of money. If the oil sector fails, okay, people who export oil to other countries and take subsidy from Nigeria and then sell at higher rates in other countries and make maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 times the initial amount, they would really be glad that the oil sector fails. In fact, as we speak that, yes, fuel is expensive, but it is available. It angers some people. Okay, they are not really glad that Dangote brought a refinery. Scarce. Yes, they are not glad that Dangote brought a refinery to Nigeria, and that was why there was a lot of back and forth when the refinery was about to start operation. Yes, he mentioned if Dangote can come out and tell you there's a cabal, okay, you should know that there is a lot going on in Nigeria. Dangote that has a conglomerate of businesses in Nigeria comes out to say he has influence. The money. In fact, he controls economies outside Nigeria because of his business interest in those countries, and then comes out to say, oh, in Nigeria there's a cabal that will rather frustrate my efforts than, you know, support me. You should know that Nigeria is in a very deep mess. So how do we get out of this? I'm not sure there is a change coming soon unless we begin to choose the right set of people. However, this might take a long time. It's not a thing you can do in 4 years. Okay, it will be a gradual process. My own problem is when you now see a few of them that are still better in terms of, politicians getting into the office. Whatever changes them within the space of 4 years and then they become part of the system, I don't understand. I was speaking to a particular member of the Federal House of Reps a few years ago. I think that was about 7 years ago, and he said, off the camera, and he said, everyone, please put your phones aside. You see, you think we don't want to do well? But the problem is when you get there, you are either rendered, useless on the floor of the house. You won't say a thing because they know that you are blocking the space. So they would rather make sure that your political party does not give you a return ticket back to the house. They would rather make sure that you are rendered very useless in your state, that nobody listens to you, nobody even cares what you want to say. And by the time you return for the ticket in the next 4 years, you are not coming back. Because they know that you are coming to disrupt business. It's business as usual everywhere when it comes to politicking and governance in the country. People do their things like they used to do it. There's never going to be a change when we continue to recycle the same set of leaders and think we want to make a change. So until we decide to say, look, let's do a form of electoral revolution, okay? It's not like so anybody is coming out with weapons, but we are coming out to cast our votes. Your biggest weapon in life is the fact that you have every right to vote as a Nigerian. Until you start using that effectively, I don't think there's a change in sight.
Exactly. And then just to conclude, I also think that, I don't know whether I might not be correct, but I think like majority of those with EFCC cases are those who were appointed, for certain offices. Yes, we also have governors, senators and things like that. So it speaks to the fact that there's a problem with appointment, that ritual in itself, in its entirety, and it's something to look at basically. Because why is it that, if you look at, 100 cases with EFCC, about 70 or 65, and it has to do with people that were appointed for certain offices. It speaks to the fact that we need to work on that as well. Right. Yes, the system may be terrible, but at the end of the day, just write your name in a golden book or something, do your best. See, when you do your best, Nigerians can see it. It doesn't matter whether some people do not like you or not. And then we can say the same for some ministers that are serving currently now. Yes, the country, the system is bad, but they are still trying to do their best. Well,
basically. it's a convenient place to leave that topic this morning, because if you continue to explore, you discover that Nigeria is just one big textbook that you might not be able to finish in a day.
They explain to you and you understand.
They are from another continent.